Dr. Marcus Chen had always been terrible at small talk. His colleagues at the xenolinguistics department often joked that he could decode the most complex alien syntax, but couldn't order coffee without stumbling over his words. If they had known that this quiet, unassuming professor would single-handedly reshape the political landscape of three-star systems, they might have paid more attention to his mumblings. The trouble began when the hegemony of Zephyrian worlds made first contact with humanity. For 2 centuries, the hegemony had expanded across the galaxy, absorbing species after species into their empire through a combination of technological superiority and psychological warfare. Their secret weapon wasn't plasma cannons or quantum destroyers. It was language itself. The Zephyrians had perfected what they called dominance syntax, a linguistic framework that embedded psychological submission directly into communication patterns. Every species they encountered eventually found themselves speaking in ways that reinforced Zephyrian authority. Trade negotiations became tribute ceremonies. Diplomatic discussions became loyalty oaths. The very structure of language reshaped, conquered minds. When the sleek Zephyrian vessels entered Earth's solar system, humanity's leaders prepared for the worst. The aliens' reputation preceded them. Dozens of civilizations had fallen without firing a single shot. Their languages gradually corrupted until resistance became literally unthinkable. The first diplomatic meeting took place aboard the neutral station at Europa. The Zephyrian delegation, tall beings with crystalline features that seemed to refract authority itself, settled into the prepared chamber. Their chief negotiator, High Linguist HFY, began the standard protocol that had subjugated worlds. We acknowledge your species collective with benevolent dominance patterns, HFY intoned, each word carefully crafted to establish hierarchical relationships. Communicate your species designation for incorporation blessing into hegemony glory. The human translation team shifted nervously. Even through the mechanical translators, something about the phrasing felt wrong, diminishing. But Dr. Chen, hunched in the corner with his tablet and a growing frown, raised his hand. "Excuse me," he said in his characteristically quiet voice. "I think there's been a translation error." HFY's crystalline features sharpened. No species had ever questioned the dominant syntax before. "Clarify, specify your meaning, concern, lesser being." Chen stood up, pushing his glasses up his nose, a nervous habit that had irritated his students for years. "Well, you see, your linguistic framework assumes cognitive hierarchy through embedded power structures, but human language evolved differently. We don't have mandatory submission markers." He began speaking directly to HFY in newly learned Zephyrian, but something extraordinary happened. Chen didn't just translate human concepts into alien words, he restructured the entire grammatical foundation. "I acknowledge respect your greeting with equal partnership recognition," Chen said, but the words carried weight beyond their meaning. "Humanity extends mutual benefit cooperation for shared prosperity outcomes." The effect was immediate and devastating. HFY staggered as if physically struck. The other Zephyrian delegates began chittering in alarm. For the first time in their species' history, they were hearing their own language stripped of its dominance patterns, rebuilt into something that assumed equality rather than hierarchy. Chen continued, unaware of the revolution he was unleashing. "Perhaps maybe we can create communication frameworks that enhance both cultures, peoples without requiring demanding submission yielding from either side?" High linguist Vex High's crystalline form began to crack, literally. The psychological foundations of Zephyrian society were embedded so deeply in their language that hearing it restructured into egalitarian patterns caused physical trauma. But worse for the hegemony, it was revelatory. Within hours, Zephyrian communications networks buzzed with Chen's linguistic innovation. Subject species throughout the empire heard recordings of their conqueror's language rebuilt into equality frameworks. The psychological chains of dominant syntax began snapping across 3-star systems. The Voloki were first. These peaceful traders had been forced into servitude for 60 years, their own language gradually corrupted until they could only think of themselves as servants. But when they heard Chen's reformed Zephyrian, they remembered how to say no again. Their rebellion began with a single word: Voloki dignity restoration. The crystalline hegemony of Andromache fell next. These hive-minded beings had been forced to fragment their collective consciousness to fit Zephyrian individualistic dominance patterns. Chen's egalitarian restructuring allowed them to say, "We many speak think as one collective equals partners," and their unity was restored overnight. Most devastating was the rebellion on Zephyr Prime itself. Lower caste Zephyrians, whose own language had been used to oppress them, suddenly possessed words for concepts their society had forbidden: self-worth, equal rights, democratic governance. The phrase Chen had innocently introduced, equal partnership recognition, became a revolutionary slogan that toppled the hegemony's government within a standard month. Dr. Chen watched the collapse of a galactic empire from his small office on Earth, still not entirely sure what had happened. His linguistic analysis had simply applied human concepts of grammatical equality to alien syntax. He hadn't intended to start 3 separate independence movements and trigger the first democratic revolution in Zephyrian history. The New Galactic Council that emerged from the chaos insisted on naming Chen as the first human ambassador emeritus, a position created specifically to honor the soft-spoken professor who had accidentally liberated half the known galaxy. Chen accepted with his characteristic awkwardness, though he did request that all diplomatic meetings include proper coffee. In his acceptance speech, delivered in a carefully crafted pidgin that borrowed equality structures from 17 different languages, Chen said something that would be quoted for generations. Language shapes thought, but humans believe thought should shape language. Every being deserves words that make them free. The former high linguist Vex High, now calling himself simply Vex, and serving as leader of the reformed Zephyrian Republic, later wrote that Dr. Chen had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. He had weaponized grammar for peace. Chen still insists he was just trying to fix a translation error. His colleagues have stopped joking about his communication skills, though they still chuckle when he orders coffee. After all, the man who toppled empires with syntax still can't remember whether he likes sugar or cream. But across the galaxy, in dozens of languages and hundreds of dialects, beings speak with grammatical structures that assume their inherent worth and dignity. They call it the Chen Protocol, the radical idea that language should serve its speakers, not subjugate them. And somewhere in a quiet office on Earth, Dr. Marcus Chen continues his work, blissfully unaware that every paper he publishes might accidentally start another revolution. His latest research on temporal linguistics has the hegemony of past tense monarchies very nervous indeed.